So, good evening, everybody. My name's Ross. I'm with Guernsey Arts, and we're delighted that Mark has agreed, actually, to a talk firstly about his exhibition, Fragments of History, Figments of the Imagination. As you know, Mark's got an exhibition in the Greenhouse Gallery at the moment, and we're delighted to have Mark in the gallery. I think we've been talking about Mark exhibiting for a number of years, but I'm really pleased that we've been able to bring this to fruition this year. And I've got to say, from the visitors book, that we'll get some fantastic comments on Mark's work. So we thought it would be nice to get behind the artist and to meet the artist and to find out a bit about his work. Mark will talk about that. Shauna has very kindly agreed to interview Mark, so thank you, Sean, for that. I think tonight's going to be very conversational, and
feel free to join in.
Yes, join in. Yeah, please do.
Yeah. I think really it's a chat amongst ourselves. I think so. With no more ado, I'll hand over to you, Sean.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Sean.
So, I mean, we've known each other quite a few years, and I've been to a few of your exhibitions before and all that, and I've been going at you for years as well. Well, you've got to have a main one kind of by yourself, you know. And because you also had that, you had that idea about doing boats that were in people's gardens.
Yes.
Because there's a lot in Guernsey.
Yeah.
But there's not one there, is there? I thought that, is there one going there?
There's one, it's a honeypot, but it's not in someone's garden.
Of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I've taken about 500 pictures of boats in people's gardens. And yeah, you know, it could stand in an exhibition around, possibly, but you might get pulled up.
But no, I always look out for them now when I say anything, Mark Windsor. But so, obviously these are all products of walks, which is something I like doing as well, walking around Guernsey and taking the occasional photograph and all that. How often do you go out on a photo walk?
Well, most days, up until this exhibition, I probably carry a camera most days. So I would usually have a camera with me. But every now and then I take a few days off to specifically get into things a bit deeper. And so
you set aside a holiday to actually go out and do that?
I've done it on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
Not so much, more like for 1 or 2 days, but I think the pattern for this exhibition started in 2014. I had a week off. I took a week off in January. I was working at the Guernsey Press, and I thought to myself, I need a break from the Guernsey Press. As Sean does, he's about to take a break. And I went out with my camera and I took buses to different places. My sister was a community nurse and she took me to a couple of places in the morning, which was lovely. And then I would walk, and what was lovely about it was that the roads were fairly empty, but there was sun as well as rain, and the granite and the low light and the little lanes of Guernsey that I don't normally walk down, which is just grew in your eyes.
That's right, yeah.
It's interesting to look at.
So I mean, are they all different times a day, or are these any specific times?
Truth be known, I take pictures at all times of the day, but there's no doubt about it. Early morning and early evening, the light tends to be better, so more interesting. But also the light and you have less light in the winter months, but when you do have light, it can be wonderful because the sun's that much lower in the sky, so you get this sort of description.
Long shadows.
Long shadows,
yeah.
The texture.
So what do you actually, when you go out, what do you actually take out with you? Do you have like multiple cameras, or do you have one, or do you use a phone? Or
Well, you can only use one camera and lens at a time, and the best way to take pictures is with one camera and one lens, and don't carry loads of baggage. But then, sadly, I became a bit of a camera guy, because I was never a camera geek. I wasn't an equipment geek, or I thought I wasn't. But when the opportunity arose because I worked in a camera shop, so when I could buy a second-hand lens, I thought I could do this, could do that. And then you end up with this heavy sack of lenses, and you can only use one at a time. So I try to not carry too much.
Keep it to a minimum. Yeah. So do you ever kind of go out and see something and think, wow, this might not be as good this time of day, so I'll come back again? Or you take any kind of preliminary shots and think, I'll come back and do it? You've got different angles? Or for each one of these scenes, how many actual photographs is there of each of these scenes? Or is you just take the one and think, right, that's perfect? Not knowing you that you don't think anything's perfect anyway, but I mean...
Well, I do take several pictures at a time, but you know, you can take several pictures in a bad lighting situation and they will all look bad.
Right, yeah.
So, and I don't deliberately revisit. I took a picture years ago that I managed to sell to a local finance company, and it was a picture of beside the reservoir, and it had beautiful flowers, beautiful lighting, and this print stood nicely on this trust company's wall, and then I lost the transparency, so I thought I would go back to take the picture, and I must have gone back I don't know, 30 times. I could never capture the original picture, so that taught me not to revisit, go for new. Yeah, I see Monica's just moved on with the pictures there.
So, I mean, obviously there's different varieties of subject matter. What you do like doing, as well as the different types of pastoral settings and environmental and agricultural settings, is you like to show the new Guernsey that you possibly don't agree with.
That's probably words to put it right into my mouth.
Not that I want to do that, no, but it's kind of, you want to show the kind of hard reality of what new modern architecture does.
Well,
Because that could be anywhere, I mean, but you are showing that it's Guernsey.
yeah, I mean, it's sort of, I think that's that sort of architecture goes. I mean, there's worse.
Yeah.
I actually find that quite, I hate to admit it, quite tolerable. But the fact of the matter, what appeals to me about a picture like that is that the idea that a large percentage of the people working there, imported staff, will be the children of people who used to work in greenhouses or owned greenhouses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to me, that's part of the history part of it. This is modern history.
Yeah.
This is a transition to a direction that I'm not particularly fond of, but I don't really know what the alternative is. So it raises more questions than gives answers, I think.
Yeah, well, I imagine there was a time when people wouldn't even
Envisage places like that in Guernsey.
We don't see that far into the future, do we?
No.
Our front door.
Sorry?
It's outside our front
It's
door.
outside our front door.
Well, our back door.
That's not the front door, is it?
That's on there.
Do you live to the right in
The apartment.
The right.
Apartments, yes.
Yes.
The first block.
Yeah.
So come out.
I mean, you have fantastic views over the island, do you?
We do.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Different every day.
And you could tell us perhaps about the percentage of, so you've got sort of finance and other companies there, but you've got a percentage of residential there, which obviously you're part of.
Well, there's about 89 flats altogether
Right.
in the 4 blocks.
Yeah.
You see very, very few people really, and since the COVID, the number of people working in these buildings has dropped
Really?
enormously.
Oh, yeah.
And even when it recovered,
There
you
used
seldom see queues to get home like you used to.
the queues used to be perhaps
Coming out of the
half
garage.
an hour wait to get out of this road here
Yeah.
onto the main Elizabeth Avenue. But
See, that's quite
right
interesting.
now it's perhaps only 20 cars at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Used to be 100.
See, that's really interesting. I'm glad you came, because that's taught us something about what's going on there. Look, when you go along the seafront, you can, on the other side of this building on the right, you can actually see that there's balconies and seats. You know that it's residential, but I very rarely, and I saw the flags hanging there for Liberation and Jubilee, Was that you?
Yeah.
But you don't see that many people enjoying the morning sun, which is
Oh,
glorious, isn't it?
every morning's different.
And the other thing that's changed completely is at night there were always people working in these buildings, but
Every light was on.
every light was
All
left
night.
on. But now
now they're
every
not.
light is out and there appears to be no one working through the night.
It's just algorithms now getting rid of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still very quiet at night though, isn't it?
Oh,
It's very quiet.
I had a friend that lived on the Isle of Dogs, in the Surrey Keys, and walking through it at night, there was absolutely no one there.
No.
Except one drunk man with a briefcase, going over the Millennium Bridge, and that was it. But you don't see anyone around there.
No.
So that's another of Sean Chapter poems. Drunk man with a briefcase going over the Millennium Bridge.
I mean, you've got all your labels on different parts that you've taken each one from.
Yeah.
Do you ever work out a route beforehand?
No, not the way you do.
No. Yeah, well, I suppose I have to do because I have to remember to tell where people will go. But I mean, you can. Is it a case of like psychogeography? It's like, yeah. It's like, have you ever heard of it?
I go around with an axe and a...
No. Psychogeography is apparently it's the exploration of urban or pastoral environments that emphasises interpersonal connections to places and arbitrary routes.
Yes.
That's a big yes. Yeah.
No, I think that's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this before. Like, do you get certain feelings in different parts of the island that come from the landscape?
I do. I think what I should say is that I quite like the idea of portals. The idea that things open up and that things are there all the time. But the perception isn't necessarily there.
Yeah.
So I go out. I do have a basic interest in history, and I have an interest in the marks people make on the land through buildings and so on. And I'm sort of influenced by a photographer called Simon Norfolk who took pictures in Afghanistan, and he was just aware of the intense history in the layers of landscape, going back to Alexander the Great, but you had the Americans, the British, and going back. So I'm quite interested in that. So that's a sort of backdrop, but when I go out, I don't go very rarely do I go out with a specific idea. Maybe I've taken pictures of Long Pierre, the standing stone.
Yeah.
So if there's some mist, I think it looks much nicer from this, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
That's I went out to take that picture quite deliberately because the fog had come down. So
did you do it? That's what I was going to ask you. Did you do it for that specific angle? Because when you step back from it, it's almost got like a face on it.
well, I probably didn't. I circumnavigated it.
Yeah.
And the picture picked itself afterwards, I think. It was the strongest picture.
Yeah.
It's always amazing up there with this some fog and mist, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looks like a nicely painted.
And it's like that with cattle rubbing against it as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Over the hundreds of years it's been there.
When I checked it out, so I don't always do historical research beforehand. Has anybody got the sheet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's got another name, which I thought was quite funny. La Palette Effet, the fairy's bat, which I thought was quite nice.
Because that was used as a bat, wasn't it? And there's something on old in it. That's the actual ball.
Oh, really?
Apparently, because he smacked it across. Or it might be down Bordeaux or something. Yeah. The bat and the ball, like.
Yeah.
They got an arm's land now, because it's used for the other West Show, the old West Show.
Yes.
The director's show.
Yeah. And they have the old agricultural
Yes,
implements.
show was once.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all cows in that field now, isn't there? At this time of year.
Yes.
So it's all cordoned off. But do you ever find yourself in places that you really shouldn't be?
Yes. I've got a picture that I'm quite fond of taken in off Talbot Valley. And you go up past the water mill You've got the steep turn there.
Right, yes, yeah.
And then you come up the hill, and there's a gateway with a barn. So I went in and took pictures, and around the corner of the barn there are a whole load of tombstones with inscriptions, and it's, I don't know, maybe it's a retired stonemason or something. So I thought I'd like to show that. I thought, well, you know, Terra Le Monde, but you know, I'm sure they wouldn't mind, but I did go there without sort of asking. So yeah, things like that. And then so the Belgrave, where they're going to be building houses, the Belgrave Vinery, that's a real much more interesting than it looks initially. It's a bit of a wasteland, but there's actually a standing stone there. There's quite a few standing stones in
a lot of hidden ones, isn't there?
Yeah,
and on private land as
yes.
well.
Yeah, Claire Auger in Bowley has one on her land, which is totally covered by brambles, and I keep on offering to cut them down, but I haven't come around to it.
And there's also a lot of
funny little piglet. Sorry, it's distracting.
going back to the sheep one. Myself and this lady were talking about where we thought it was.
Oh yes,
You reckon it was Cathedral, didn't you?
I thought it was the cat
Yeah.
because I passed sheep,
Right.
like it was like colour, you know, the piebald ones, regularly. But that's I think
It's near. I might have got it wrong. It's near. I think it's in the forest actually. We found today. Sean picked up on an image. I don't think it's in this series where we said it's two different places, but Sean was actually correct. In fact, apart from the fact I like Sean, he's a wordsmith. He loves Guernsey, and he's done so many nice articles. And he's been probably more studious in his recollections of where he's been going.
It's only because I went there past there the other day and I thought, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
But that was in the forest.
But they're all pregnant.
Yeah, so Peter's now pointed out, or did before, they're all pregnant.
It must be January.
It looks wintry, but maybe.
There's one show, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the good things about Mark's work. Have you all found yourself thinking, oh, I know where that is, or I think I know where that is?
No, I think they're making a statement.
Oh, really, yeah?
What I'd like to know is, what is that statement?
It's a picket line.
Sheep on strike. It's topical anyway.
Yeah, and you know, it's quite a few years ago we didn't have any sheep in Guernsey apart from a few on Leo
Island, yeah, of course, yeah. And a few down Lorraine, weren't there?
Yeah.
Down there, yeah.
Yeah, CBDT.
Yeah.
They're complaining about the shepherds.
There was sheep there. It was eccentric.
So both this and your 2018 exhibition, History of the Future, explore. There's a few photographs in there that explore edgelands, kind of where the rural meets the suburban.
Yeah.
And whenever I used to do a shots track, and I used to go around the back of the tip, and my boss used to say to me, what attracts you to such places? Why would anyone want to walk down there? But not all walks are designed to take in eye-crushingly beautiful imagery, or scenery,
Yeah.
and all that. And that's what you like to explore sometimes in your work. I think it was in the other exhibition, and forgive me for going on about it, but there's like a car covered up and a big pile of greenhouse that had been dismantled.
Yes.
We've got quite a few dismantled greenhouses in this one, haven't we?
Yes.
So yeah.
And that's, the thing about this is the Tomato Museum. Not only is it an old greenhouse, it's what was the Tomato Museum. So,
Kings Mills area.
yeah.
Symbolic.
Yeah.
Was it a popular attraction? Because they used to...
It's really popular.
with photographers, yeah. But they used to make they used to sell tomato wine.
Yes. It was terrible.
That can't be really good, can it? Bloody Marys. Is there another one as well?
It was in the Stevie era, it was popular, but it was one of those attractions that needed to beef up. It was going to survive, and it didn't.
Well, Sean's arrived at a good point about this wastelands I mentioned. I love photography and I find it really, it's a great excuse to go and look at the world. But photographs are so many photographs are formulaic, and even though a lot of them are lovely, people go out to take pictures of the picture that they've seen. You know, they just keep on repeating it. And so, how many pictures can I put in an exhibition of Fort Grey or Castle Corner or Cobo Bay? Although I love Cobo Bay, but on a bright sky day. And I think people start looking because I think photography impacts on how people see things. And I think photographic imaging is, in so many ways, very restrictive. It becomes the received, it's like the received pronunciation of visual culture. So, but I don't actually want to play around with photography too much. I want to photograph things as they are. So it's actually easier to take pictures off the beaten track because you can see things perhaps in a way more originally.
Yes, yeah.
And these things exist, they're part of our history.
And they're quite modern greenhouses as well, aren't they?
Yes,
I mean, it's definitely in the last 30 years, that, isn't it?
Yes.
Because, where's that?
Right, that's in the forest.
Yeah, that's forest as well, is it?
Yeah.
We don't often think of those as people's homes, and I do know at least one person who I understand actually lives and sleeps in one.
A lady.
No,
No.
a gentleman
Uh-huh.
who used to worship regularly at St Stephen's Church and Town Church,
Uh-huh.
and was a server, etc., etc.
Really?
And his whole life is on his bicycle. Surely you must have seen
Oh,
his
yes.
ride.
Yes.
That's Gary, his name is.
That's right.
Yeah, he rides past St Joseph's Church and sits on the steps. I chat to him every now and then. In
Yes.
fact, I got into, I asked him if I could take his picture, and he said what for, and I said, self-consciously for the record, but he didn't want to look at the lens, and
No.
he's a year or two younger than me, I think, but he seems to be very contained and happy in his world.
And we see him because of the weather being so beautiful. He's cycling most of the time around the island. In the winter, he walks with this incredibly laden bicycle, which you think is his complete world.
Yes.
I know him quite well, one of his relatives, and also one of his
And in
friends.
some ways you
Lives
feel
on the couch.
incredibly sad, and in other ways you feel, well, it's a choice that
Yes.
That's what he wants
people
to do,
make,
isn't it?
isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it is a choice, I think. And they say he's quite a spiritual person as well. Like
You spent quite a few years in the UK, obviously you were at university
Yeah.
in different places, and I imagine you took many photographs there.
Yes.
Was your subject matter similar there as it is in Guernsey, or did you find yourself doing more kind of portraits and shots of people?
It was more urban street photography. Sort of. I went to a college in what's now Derbyshire University, and it was the first BA of its type, sort of following an American model to photography as art. There's a history of photography in the UK as a craft, as an artisan thing. I don't want to big it up as an art form, but it was just a different approach. So when I started, they were still, there was a sort of two schools essentially. There was, photography is an art, there's landscape photography, and then there's humanistic documentary photography. And I sort of walked the line between the two,
Right.
fascinated by both. And then by the time I got to the end of the course, it was already, doubt was creeping into the photography, because when you take pictures of people, there's an element of, voyeurism, exploitation, and the vulnerability, photographers in privileged positions. So
You don't like that, do you? You don't like exploitation. You have kind of morals.
I have moral doubts, but I don't know that I'm always moral.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Because I do take pictures like, okay, in this sort of scenario here.
Yeah.
That's,
Right, okay, yeah.
so that's to me a great street shot.
Mhm.
There's lots of cameras around, and everybody's having a great time, so there's no issue with taking pictures in a situation like that. But there are other situations where I'd love to capture people as they are. I always talk about a picture taken by a French photographer of a playground, children play, they're well in the distance, but I just thought if I turn up at, as I live above Vaughan School, if I turn up outside the school and I can to take pictures, it's just not going to happen. And yet there's this beautiful scene of children playing, and you'd have to ask the permission of every parent at the school. I mean, it's just a nightmare, so it doesn't get done.
I
So
sometimes take little pictures like that, or music, or for Facebook or whatever, but you're in a border zone. If somebody objected, saying, I don't want my photograph taken or put there, then it's a delicate area, isn't it?
you have to honour it, really. But I mean,
Exactly.
in the 19th century, street photography, I think there was a time when it was banned.
Right.
And then it became open season, and now it's, what I find strange is we've got phone cameras everywhere and surveillance cameras.
Of course, yeah.
So it's, pictures are being taken all the time, but it's just, our value systems are being really jumbled. But it's something like that. I mean, I think it's fine. If I go to the West Show, or I've taken pictures at weddings, and I mean, I used to hate weddings because of a fear of getting married. No. But no, I've done weddings, and you think, oh, there's a lot of responsibilities, a special day. But one of the wonderful things about weddings is you get this mix of families and characters, and even if they get divorced 3 or 4 times, it doesn't happen that often, does it? That's a mix of people.
Yeah.
And it's sort of open season just to take pictures of people enjoying life. And
But I mean, you captured it right there. Everyone's. It's just there's so much going on. It's like almost like a bridal painting. You've got someone serving the food. You've got a couple there. You've got someone rejoicing there. You've got the close up here of the dad with the kid on his shoulders. A bit of a rude gesture there, perhaps. And it's people filing out. It's like I think it's like a modern day bridal painting.
it's a bit closer.
But closer, yeah, not as far away, yeah. Bridal the elder rather than the younger, because he just used to rip him off, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, not just this exhibition as well. I mean, Paul, you had the Fairmain Tavern, and I don't know if anyone's been to the Fairmain Tavern, but there's loads of pictures from Mark. It's taken over the years of bands that have played there. Some famous, some not so famous. But I mean, how often when we only thinking, God, I wish I had a camera, just to take photographs of these times, and you did, and you took photographs of these times. I mean, did you get them photographs back, or did you?
I inherited them.
You inherited them then, yeah. And
Yeah, there was some taken in the time of Jerry Roots, and then Paul's son took over and said,
yeah.
can you do some new prints? So he had me and Andrew LePedman, who's done the more modern ones. So in the top part of the bar, most of the pictures are mine.
Yeah.
And in the bottom part, there's some of Andrew's as well, and he's got some more modern ones.
Yeah.
He paid more than you did.
Eh?
He paid more than you did.
So, I mean, that's my questions complete. Would anyone like to